welcome to the Meeple Mentor YouTube channel, and this is an episode of our Meeple Mentor reviews, and I'm Jared, and with me is Holly. So today we're going to talk about our thoughts on AEG's latest game, Shake That City. This is a brand new live on Kickstarter game funding now about shaking up some cubes to get a pattern of a grid of 3x3. And the different color cubes that come out are the different representative tiles that you add to your personal board, which is your own unique city. And everyone sitting around the table is oriented differently to the arrangement of the pattern of those cubes. And so on your turn, you choose a color of the ones out there, and you get to place all of those tiles, according to how many are out, in the same exact pattern that you see based on your position on the table. Essentially, you have to match it up, and as long as you can place it in your city somewhere, you can do it. If you can't, then you can't really choose that color. You have to go with something else. So if there's only like one color of a cube, that's the one you might have to do, because then you can just put that one anywhere because there's no other one to make a pattern with. So, there's different ways to score this, and there's different variable tiles that come on the outside that also can flip over when rows and columns, get a certain number of colors or types of tiles. Mm-hmm. So, this is a pretty light game. It's 2 to 4 players. Actually, I believe there's a solo mode. 1 to 4, 20 to 30 minutes, something like that. And that's about the same playtime that, we've found it to be in our plays.
It's fairly quick.
Yeah, and we played it a couple times. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a lot of fun. But what are some of your initial thoughts of the game?
I like it. It's a good game. It's a good structure. I kind of struggle a little just because of the mechanics of the game. But I enjoyed it. I found I did better the second time when I understood it a little more.
Kind of that first play learning.
So maybe there's just a learning curve for me, as there usually is. So, but I enjoyed it. I like the way the pieces fit around the board, and I like the different scoring techniques where if you match a factory and a house on either side of a park, you can count points. It's just little different things that make it neat scoring. I bet the other side is fun too, the beachfront side.
Yeah, and that's an important note is there's different terrain types, like colors on your map, and certain things score differently depend on which terrain that they're placed in. And so there's 2 sides, and everybody has the same 2 sides. So the one side is your recommended starting one, where it's just kind of like concentric squares to the middle, and then the other side is kind of more of a I don't know, like what would you call that? Like a diagonal increment to a corner.
Sort of.
Yeah. And it's got a beach. 2 sides are the beach, and 2 sides like lead out into other land, right? So that would be a more difficult side to play. One of the reasons is because when you place roads and when you try to connect certain tiles like factories and businesses, those do need to have a route from a road adjacent to them out of the city. And so if you're playing on that backside, you only have 2 outer edges. You can't build a road into the beach.
Right.
So that's definitely going to make it a little more tricky. And of course the terrain, the green, the brown, and the gray, those are all in different places, and it's going to be much harder to get to some of those in the corner, especially given that you have to go a further distance with road before you're able to make some of these things score.
Right.
But yeah, so you made this really good point about how the scoring affects, each placement, or how the placement affects their each scoring, right? There's 5 or 6, 5 different types.
5.
5 different types. There's the neighborhoods, the businesses, the factories, roads, and parks. Each one scores differently. Some of them can be non-scorable depending on where they are and what they're next to. And for instance, neighborhoods, each one is 2 points, no matter how many are connected to it. So if you have a large connection of neighborhood tiles, 3 or 4 or something like that, that's just 2 points.
However, if you're connected to a factory, property value goes down and it scores nothing.
That's right. Additionally, if you just have an isolated neighborhood, so it's just one tile and no other neighborhoods touching it, that neighborhood also scores 2 points. So you're actually encouraged to make really small neighborhoods in a sense.
You're kind of encouraged to make a city structure because, you know, if you place the parks next to with the factory on one side, then there's a park and then there's a home that scores you the most points, 2 points. It's about beautification of the area, you know?
Yeah. It's like the neighborhood's fine with seeing the park as long as the factory is like...
on the other side.
That's fine. I got a park to deal with.
At least I have trees.
Yeah. It is a very abstracted game as far as, you know, building a city. It is city building. It is tile placement. It is pattern building, pattern recognition. There's a lot of spatial skills needed to be able to play effectively and, you know, place things out into your map. And of course, depending on what color cubes come out and how many in a certain color that you get to choose, well, that's going to dictate like how full your map gets and how quick it gets. There's 15 rounds. And so the first 12 rounds, you've got everybody, whoever's the active player, they get to choose theirs first, and everyone else can't choose that one color. They have to choose something else. So in a 2-player game, it's just we can't choose the same thing. Now, I think starting in round 12 or 13?
13. Starting
in 13. So those final 3 rounds, at that point, that rule is gone. And so I think just to sort of compensate for the fact that the options are more limited.
Right.
You know, you're going to be like, well, if there's only one, you know, color of one thing and I can't use any of the other patterns, you know, that's where they get rid of that rule. And so anybody can choose the same cube and same buildings to build. So
it's a really good game. I like it. I'm a fan of the thematic quality of it, you know, in keeping with the, hey, let's build this city.
I think, you know, we haven't even talked about it, but I think one of the most unique parts of the game is the cube shaker.
Yes.
So you assemble this thing. It's made of cardboard. It's got some holes in it and different layered cardboard pieces. And then you kind of fold it up into itself. And then there's a moving piece in the middle that has rubber bands on each side to help it like move back and forth. You just kind of punch it back and forth. And then out drops, you know, 9 cubes in this pattern.
Reminds me of Camel Up, wasn't it?
Camel Up, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Except in Camel Up, there's only one dice that comes out, die.
And a fairly larger contraption.
It is. Camel Up feels more, I don't know, it's different.
But it's like an ejection thing, you know, as opposed to sliding it out.
But it's the same kind of feel where there's a thing that you shake, just like the pyramid from the Camel Up, and then there's a button, and then like a certain number of things comes out. Well, in this one, it just kind of drops out exactly 9 cubes in that pattern every time you do it.
Well, every time you do it.
Well, I mean, there's a method to it, you know, but it works pretty well. You know, you just set it on the table after you're done shaking, and then you just kind of push, and then you can pick it up, and it's good to go, generally speaking. But it's actually a lot of fun, and you know, if you've seen any of their lead up to the campaign and the advertising for the game, they're all about, you know, like, let's see everybody shake and do the thing, because that is a big aspect of, you know, what you do in the game is when it's your turn and you get to, you know, kind of dictate how the cubes come out. You put them in the top and then you just shake it like crazy, and then you get a chance to see what comes out. Speaking of the different color cubes that are in there, they're not all the same quantities and ratios. So certain types of tiles that you could build aren't necessarily going to come out as often. I believe the roads aren't going to come out as often.
Yes, the roads are very few.
And so,
as compared to the rest.
Yeah, and so you do have kind of a tile board to look at for like a reference on how many cubes there are in the cube shaking box, and in that reference it also has the scoring, you know, on how each of the tiles works. I really enjoyed shaking the cube shaker, and I'd never really seen one like that, or one that operates quite like that to, you know, kind of make an actual pattern of a certain number. Like I said, the pyramid one's cool, but I mean, you only just get the one, and I don't know. Like, I get it works for that game, but this one's pretty unique because it takes that same idea and just expands it. I think that's really neat. It's really cool. It is kind of an abstract, but it's fairly light. It doesn't take too much time to play or teach. I would say you could probably play this with, kids and your family and new gamers. It could be really fun as a gateway game for sure.
Yeah.
And I would also liken this to Tiny Towns. Now, you've played Tiny Towns, right?
Oh, gosh, don't get me trying to recall Tiny Towns.
It's been a while.
I have to play it 3 or 4 times before I'm like, oh, yeah, that game.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Tiny Towns has a similar type of thing going on where one person, chooses something and then everyone else follows suit. This is similar. One person chooses it, everyone else doesn't. They do something else. But you also have a grid board in Tiny Towns, like in this one, where you're trying to make patterns. And you're also trying to, the cubes are used, but like you're trying to arrange them in certain positions. So there's a little bit of overlap on the kinds of gameplay in there, but this one does it a little bit differently. So I think, you're going to like it, especially if you like spatial games, spatial awareness, pattern games, and shaking things. I mean, honestly, people who like dice and games because of the shaking aspect, you might enjoy being able to take a whole bunch of cubes and shake them up really good in the box, which is, a large part of what you do. So, I think it's great. I really enjoyed it. I
would just like to interject and advise, don't shake it the way he is imitating it because all the cubes will fall out.
You'll find your own method, I'm sure. That's part of the fun. And if they come out, just put them back in and no problem. Just keep going. But we had a lot of fun with it. So I would recommend it if that sounds good to you, because it was enjoyable and, it doesn't take long, so you can play a couple times and see how you do each time. Any final thoughts?
I liked it. It was a good game,
Cool.
It's always good times.
Very cool. All right. Well, thanks for sticking in to this video, tuning in or whatnot, and hearing our review. Stick around, of course, on the channel if you want to see more content like our reviews, tutorials, news every other week, our podcast, and much more. So this has been Meeple Mentor Reviews. I'm Jared.
I'm Holly.
We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.